Section 7.8 The Antichrist. We now turn to one of the most perplexing developments in Western Christianity, the figure of the Antichrist. To begin, it is essential to define the commonly held belief within Western Christian thought. In the context of Western fundamentalism, the Antichrist is often portrayed as a malevolent figure who will arise in the end times to deceive humanity and oppose the return of Christ. Typically envisioned as a charismatic leader, the Antichrist seeks to unite the world under his control, leading people away from true faith toward a false and oppressive system. Empowered by Satan, this figure is believed to usher in a period of intense tribulation, marked by the persecution of believers and widespread deception. The rise of the Antichrist is seen as part of a series of prophetic events that will culminate in the second coming of Christ, at which point the Antichrist will be defeated, and God's divine justice will be fully realized. However, the question remains, what specific scriptures refer to the Antichrist? 1 John chapter 2 verse 18. Little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. 1 John chapter 2 verse 22. Who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist, that denieth the Father and the Son. 1 John chapter 4 verse 3. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come. And even now already is it in the world. 2 John chapter 7. For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an Antichrist. As we examine the term, Antichrist, it becomes clear that every mention of it is found in the writings of John, and notably, it is absent from the book of Revelation. This raises an important question. What exactly does Antichrist mean? The term is derived from the Greek word antichristos, which is a compound of two components. The prefix anti is a preposition that can mean against, opposite, or in place of, while the second part, Christos, is the Greek word for Christ, itself coming from the Hebrew term for the Anointed One, or Messiah. Therefore, Antichristos translates literally to against Christ, or in place of Christ, referring to anything or anyone that opposes or denies the identity and mission of Jesus Christ. This term is broad in its application, potentially referring to multiple individuals or even groups, as indicated by the verses that use the term. However, this prompts another question. How did the concept of the Antichrist evolve into the idea of a singular figure who will rule during the end times? To explore this, we must turn to early Christian theologians such as Irenaeus and Tertullian. In his work Against Heresies, Irenaeus links John's references to multiple antichrists with Paul's description of the man of lawlessness and the beast from Revelation. By drawing these connections, Irenaeus constructs a composite figure, a single, satanically empowered individual who embodies the ultimate opposition to Christ. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Revelation chapter 13 verses 1 to 10. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Irenaeus further connects this figure to the prophecies in Daniel, particularly the vision of the little horn. Daniel chapter 7 verse 8. I considered the horns, and, behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And, behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Tertullian expands on Irenaeus's ideas, reinforcing the notion that the Antichrist is a singular, future figure who will rise to oppose God, exalt himself, and be empowered by Satan. By the Middle Ages, this concept of the Antichrist as a singular end-times figure, emerging just before Christ's second coming, became firmly entrenched in Western Christianity. The development of eschatological frameworks, such as Augustine's City of God, helped to solidify this understanding. During the Reformation, figures like Martin Luther and other reformers reinterpreted the Antichrist, seeing it not as a distant future figure, but as a present, living entity. Luther, for example, famously identified the Pope and the papacy as the Antichrist, arguing that they had usurped Christ's authority. This shift reflects how the concept of the Antichrist evolved alongside changing cultural and theological landscapes. If these connections between various figures and the Antichrist seem arbitrary or underdeveloped, it is because, in my view, they are. These figures are never directly linked in the biblical text and only emerge as a composite in the interpretations of early Western Church Fathers. While I cannot delve into each of these interpretations here, I encourage readers to consult Volume 3 of my writings, particularly the section on Revelation, for a more thorough examination. Section 7.8.1 Translational partiality. One of my chief concerns with modern interpretations of the Antichrist revolves around how certain translations of the Bible can, in my view, obscure the original meaning of key passages. To highlight this, let us revisit 1 John chapter 4 verse 3 and compare its rendering across 3 prominent translations: the King James Version, the New International Version, and the New King James Version. By examining these versions, we can better understand how subtle differences in translation might affect our interpretation of the text and, by extension, our understanding of the concept of the Antichrist. 1 John chapter 4 verse 3, King James Version. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come. And even now already is it in the world. John chapter 4 verse 3, New International Version. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and even now is already in the world. 1 John chapter 4 verse 3, New King James Version. And every spirit that does not confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard was coming, and is now already in the world. The King James Bible, completed in 1611 by a team of 50 scholars, represents a monumental achievement in the history of biblical translation. With its remarkable precision and enduring influence, it brought the Hebrew and Greek texts into English, shaping both biblical scholarship and English literature. Despite its imperfections, it remains a cornerstone of Christian tradition. In this version, the phrase, "This is that spirit of Antichrist," broadly refers to all who oppose Christ, offering a less personified and more generalized depiction of opposition. In contrast, the New International Version, NIV, first published in 1978, introduces a significant shift in wording, rendering the phrase as "the spirit of the Antichrist." This subtle alteration implies a more specific or potentially singular identity, moving from the broad concept found in the King James Bible to a more focused reference. The New King James Version, NKJV, published in 1982, takes this evolution even further, presenting the phrase as "the spirit of the Antichrist." The capitalization of Antichrist personifies the term, framing it as a singular, definitive figure. This change reflects a shift in theological emphasis, influenced by cultural and doctrinal developments over time. The rise of dispensationalist theology, particularly in the 19th and 20th centuries, played a pivotal role in popularizing the notion of a singular, apocalyptic Antichrist. Figures like John Nelson Darby and the Scofield Reference Bible were instrumental in advancing this interpretation, which was further propagated in works such as Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth. This eschatological framework has left a profound mark on modern Christian thought, shaping expectations about the nature of the Antichrist. It is essential to note that these observations are not intended as critiques of the King James, New International, or New King James versions. Each of these translations is widely respected and remains central to Christian practice and scholarship. Rather, the differences in phrasing demonstrate how translational choices can influence theological understanding, particularly concerning eschatological concepts. While these variations may affect interpretation, all three versions uphold the core tenets of salvation, demonstrating their fidelity to the foundational principles of Christian doctrine. The evolving terminology, then, underscores the dynamic relationship between cultural contexts, theological frameworks, and the presentation of biblical ideas. Section 7.8.2 Abrahamic Cultural Feedback Loop. The imagery of an apocalyptic deceiver is not confined to Christian theology, but also features prominently in Islamic eschatology, where a comparable figure, al-Masih ad-Dajjal, occupies a central role. The term, Dajjal, originates from an Arabic root meaning, to deceive, or, to cover, underscoring his role as a deceiver who leads humanity astray. Within Islamic tradition, the Dajjal is portrayed as a false messianic figure who emerges during the end times, performing counterfeit miracles and proclaiming divinity in a deliberate effort to mislead the masses. The parallels between the Christian Antichrist and the Islamic Dajjal are striking, particularly when one considers that early Islam developed within a cultural and religious milieu shaped by the Abrahamic traditions of Judaism and Christianity. It is reasonable to infer that the Islamic concept of the Dajjal was influenced, at least in part, by Christian eschatological ideas that had already been articulated by early theologians such as Irenaeus and Tertullian. This cultural and theological exchange likely created a feedback loop, where shared motifs of a great deceiver were further entrenched in both traditions. As a result, both the Antichrist and the Dajjal serve as archetypal antagonists within their respective religious narratives, symbolizing the ultimate opposition to divine truth and justice. These figures are not merely abstract or theoretical constructs, They embody profound fears of spiritual deception and moral corruption that threaten to erode the foundations of faith and righteousness. Yet, their enduring resonance across religious and cultural boundaries invites a deeper question. What is it about the imagery of the Antichrist, and by extension, figures like the Dajjal, that exerts such a powerful grip on the human imagination? The answer lies in the universal and archetypal nature of these symbols. They represent a fundamental human fear, the fear of being deceived by an individual wielding immense power and authority, who not only distorts truth but seeks to annihilate it. This fear speaks to humanity's intrinsic quest for ultimate truth and salvation. Within this framework, the Antichrist and the Dajjal stand as diametrical opposites to the hope and redemption promised by the divine, personifying the ultimate challenge to the human pursuit of faith, morality, and meaning.